Hello, everybody. Welcome to Experiential Learning Congress. My name is Çiğdem Taşkın. I'm from Turkey. It was a wonderful opportunity to meet you in this conference, and I just had a chance to listen Alice and David Kolb and Ilke. It was very valuable and inspiring. And now we have three presenters here. They will talk about experiential learning, and I'm looking forward to hear them. So our first presenter is Jordan Levy. Her presentation title is The Role of Institutions in the Experiential Bargain. But I just would like to remind you that it will be an asynchronous seminar. So if you have any questions for Jordan, you can ask probably through email. So if Deniz, if you are ready, we can actually start for Jordan's presentation. And I just would like to remind you once more that you have 15 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes for question and answer. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jordan Levy, the founder and executive director of CapSource. We're an experiential learning company dedicated to bridging the skills gap between the professional work environment and higher education. I've been working in the education space for about 10 years now. I actually founded CapSource in 2017 as a way to help institutions, their administrators, educators, and staff build and scale high-impact experiential learning programs. And ultimately, we're in this for the students. We believe they really need this experience. And we've learned quite a lot about what the role is of institutions and what we call is the experiential bargain, or the trade-off between experiential learning for institutions and their students and experiential hiring for the industry partners that are involved. I want to thank the Experiential Learning Congress for inviting us here today to present. We feel that this is an incredible organization that supports the growth, expansion of high quality impactful experiential learning. And we're looking forward to sharing with you a little bit about our methodology and framework and what we use to make sure that experiential learning is accessible to all students and that they're all graduating with reference-worthy experience and a good perspective on their field of study from a professional standpoint. So to get us started, I wanted to kind of cover first and foremost why experiential learning is necessary and why we think it's the future of education. A lot of the terminology around the skills gap has been around for decades now. Students are graduating without the skills that they need, both soft and technical. And in order for schools to be able to train students on the types of skills that they need to be in touch with industry. So when we ask industry leaders what they think about experiential learning and the need to train students more for the professional work environment, many don't currently believe that schools are doing a good job at preparing students for the workforce, but they believe that they can. And so that's why we have built our business around serving institutions and helping them transition from a content-oriented education approach to an experiential education approach. Of course, the students, the key consumer, some might even say the customer of higher education, they don't believe they're getting the outcomes that they want either. And if this continues to happen, they're going to look elsewhere, and so will the business leaders that are recruiting these students. So to start off with, kind of what is experiential learning, right? We think it's the solution to the skills gap problem because it puts students in a place to actually develop real outcomes for real stakeholders using those critical soft and technical skills. So some of the soft skills we like to track are communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. And we also believe strongly that it's not just soft skills that make you successful from day one on the job, although that definitely helps land the position and start off on the right foot. But ultimately, we think that students need to practice using technical tools like the G Suite, Microsoft Office, Power BI, Google Analytics, project management software like Asana and Jira. in order to develop real outcomes for real stakeholders who provide real feedback along the way. And so ultimately, we think that experiential learning is more defined by the outcome of the experience than the actual experience itself. Every experience is a learning experience, if you look at it the right way. But experiential learning is actually about generating reference-worthy experience or resume-worthy experience, which means it has to be attributed to a real organization. It has to be dedicated to a real function within that organization where the students are working on real challenges that have real stakes. So we've published a whole article about each of the soft skills and how it's done, how it's used in the experiential learning process. And we also talk a lot about reference-worthy experience as an outcome and why that's the crucial crux of how we design these experiential learning opportunities. At the end of the day, the students need to walk away with a new perspective, with something, with some semblance of value that they've provided to a real stakeholder that they can talk about on interviews and put on their resume and LinkedIn. So we think that there's basically two methodologies for experiential learning that are scalable. We like to say it's single student or multi-student, which is the capstone model, and then the multi-team, which is the live case model. The neat thing here is that these approaches have been used for generations. We just need to figure out how to get industry to say yes more often, and ultimately map out a set of goals and objectives that align with the teaching goals, which is actually a rather difficult process. But if you come at it with the right mentality and you attract the right industry partners, it should be relatively easy to identify project scopes that are going to benefit the students and the host organization. So I wanted to quickly give a couple of examples of what we mean. Obviously, pre-COVID, a lot of these experiential learning engagements had an in-person component, although students are working enrolled full-time in other classes, usually on campus and not able to go to an office. So a lot of this can happen and should happen virtually. This is an example of students actually working with the leadership team from a company called Hungry that does corporate catering. These are MBAs from the University of Notre Dame, trying to figure out what the growth strategy should be. Where should this company expand into next from a geographical standpoint? And so this actually gives the opportunity for students to network, work as a team, develop their soft skills, and develop real outcomes for real stakeholders, which is exactly what they need out of their college experience. Now, of course, post-COVID, we've started to think a lot more about how do you facilitate this entire experience virtually. Not much of a challenge, right? There's the same tools that all industry organizations are using now to facilitate communication and collaboration among their team members can also be used by students that are collaborating with their team members. So this is an example of a live case competition. So it's actually many teams of students working on a challenge that we put together based on an organization called CoinSource, which is based down in Fort Worth, Texas. They're a Bitcoin ATM provider, and they were actually asking the students to help them figure out what the go-to-market strategy should be as they pivoted to a platform as a service or a more enterprise approach rather than selling individual kiosks to retail stores. They were trying to figure out how to sell the technology and infrastructure so that they can spread Bitcoin ATMs further and wider and reach a larger audience. I think the outcomes of this were some of the most impactful ever. We're actually working with CoinSource in the future and developing more live case experiences for them because they generated such meaningful outcomes, not only strategically and operationally, the ideas that the students came up with, but they actually hired 4 students out of this engagement that were the top performers. So now we're getting to see what is the value proposition of all this to the industry side of the platform? Well, it's experiential hiring. You're getting a chance to test out these students, challenge them with something that's real and tangible that you're actually thinking about on a regular basis from an operational and executive strategy standpoint. They're interacting with your leadership. They're learning about your business and industry and products. And then ultimately, they're ready to go once you are queued up and hiring the ones that you think are the best fit. This is an example of a certificate that we provided to the students. They can use this directly on their social, whether it's LinkedIn, or Facebook or Instagram, they can actually proudly say, hey, I participated in something that helped me gain experience in these fields based on this organization with this challenge. And that's really powerful for them, because that's exactly the type of conversation recruiters and talent leaders are looking to discuss when students and young professionals are applying for full-time jobs. So this leads us to the trade-off, right? So what is going on between the students and the educators involved in the experiential bargain and the industry side of the platform, the industry hosts that provide intellectual property, mentoring, and the ultimate challenge that the students are going to work on. So we like to say that the students get to apply theory to real projects that have real stakes, and that companies derive fresh ideas and cost-effective solutions to their business challenges. Of course, also, students are able to develop key soft and technical skills while networking professionally, both with their peers and with the organization that hosts them, various professionals that are involved in these projects. So on the other side, companies are actually getting to train and onboard new talent, and they get to brand themselves as an employer that cares about the next generation, that wants to hear those insights, and that ultimately is ready to hire the students that are the best performers. And then I think the key outcome of all of this for the students is reference-worthy experience, as we mentioned. That's the ability to reference a specific example where you made an impact on a real organization, real stakeholders. And the company ultimately gets evaluated talent to hire the best folks that are the right fit organizationally and strategically, depending on the department and who's in need of talent. So this kind of quickly highlights what we mean by reference-worthy experience. These students are technically learning, right? So the classroom becomes the company is what we like to say. And the students are actually able to synthesize down their experience to a few bullet points, like Brandon did in this example, that they can showcase on LinkedIn. And that is what creates momentum for them as they're applying for more jobs. They're not applying something out of their league above their pay grade. They're earning a new pay grade. They're earning their right to have a seat at the table, to be invited into the room to discuss their qualifications and how they can make a real difference. And the inherent challenge with traditional curriculum is that you're sitting in a classroom, you can't really make an impact on a real organization. In these cases, you can. And so that's really what enables the students to be proud of the work that they've done and showcase what they can actually accomplish. So we also like to really dive into the other side of the model. So what is flipped experiential hiring? Flipped hiring is a new concept that essentially gives challenges to candidates before they're hired, right? So you're not actually engaged full-time working while you're working on these challenges. You're actually still in the recruitment funnel, and then you're hired at the end. So we like to say it's a three-step process. It starts with engage, which really comes down to designing the experience, recruiting the right candidates, launching the experience, and challenging the students with a relevant challenge based on the role that you're vetting them for. And then the assessment part, you'll notice, is actually very similar to the component of the experiential learning framework that talks about the skills that the students are developing. And so the same skills that they're developing are also the ones that companies are vetting. So that's the true crux of the bargain. And then at the end, the organizations get to hire the best ones, right? The selecting and retaining top talent that are qualified, they're engaged, they feel empowered to be productive, right? Those are the best candidates. Those are the ones that will stick around for the longest term. So this is the main point we wanted to share with you, is a kind of, okay, so now we understand what experiential learning is and experiential hiring is. Where do institutions and their educators fit into this model? We like to say that it fits into three pillars. Organization, so that's the design of the experience, enrollment of students, alignment with teaching goals and company objectives, right? That's the organization component. The facilitation component is actually the implementation of that experience from a learning standpoint and from a project standpoint, right? So to some extent, it's almost like running a consulting firm. Instead of you doing the work, you have students that are supporting you, that are helping you do the research, that are synthesizing results and coming up with ideas that they can bounce off of you. It's a co-created environment. And ultimately, we want to help the students reflect and learn from these experiences. So that's a big piece of the CapSource platform, is trying to figure out how to help students reflect on what's happening and really deduce what it is that they're learning from these experiences. Lastly, accreditation, right? This is the component that makes universities defensible compared to other education providers that might be for-profit or professional development oriented. These can actually be accumulated together and packaged as programs, whether it's part of an MBA program, part of a different type of Master's of Science level program, or undergraduate. And even in some cases, we're using this for high schools. So the institution ultimately serves to assign credit to these experiences, and that's really the role of institutions in the experiential bargain. So ultimately, we developed this flywheel. This is what we like to help schools accomplish. Of course, you got to start by building experiential learning programs. You can't attract companies without them. But once you start having those programs and that they're successful, you're starting to really produce desirable talent that gets placed into those organizations. And then I think the key for the future of institutions is really figuring out how to monetize industry partners, often alumni that want to give back. And so that's what we really like to say is a big outcome of this entire model, is that there is now a differentiated revenue source for institutions that really want to drive value to the partners that they're bringing into the curricular piece of their organization. So we invite you all to join our growing network. We're very proud of the progress that we've made over the last few years since we've gotten started. Thousands of students, hundreds of companies working together on challenges that are research-oriented, project-based, and experiential. It wouldn't be possible without our experiential educators. These are folks that are dedicated to helping students learn more about themselves, learn more about the professional work environment, and find a career path that works for them, and ultimately get started from a really great place. And so these are awesome educators that have filled out profiles, that are sharing their story, sharing their methodology of what is experiential learning. So we definitely recommend checking out our experiential educators page on our website and applying to participate if you consider yourself an experiential educator. In short, CapSource would love to help drive experiential learning adoption and scale at your school. We do it through two primary methods. One is Connect Software, which is a white label ecosystem, an experiential learning management system that helps educators coordinate, manage, and scale programs with industry partners. And then the sourcing and project design service is where we match educators and design projects with industry partners based on narrow academic requirements and teaching goals. So to wrap up here, we hope that you're interested in bridging the skills gap with us. We hope to get more industry involved, integrated, and invested into education. We want universities to find that experiential learning is approachable and effective as a way to prepare students for their careers, and students are ultimately engaged and career ready. A big shout out to my team for making this possible. We really enjoy the opportunity to help universities grow their experiential learning impact and process, and it wouldn't really be possible without our core team and our advisors. I invite you all to get in touch with us. You can, of course, give us a ring directly, shoot us an email, or on the website, capsource.io. There's a way for you to schedule time directly on my calendar, and I'd love to meet with you and hear a little bit about your experiential learning endeavors. So with that, I want to say thank you to the Experiential Learning Congress for putting together some awesome sessions and curating thought leadership around experiential learning. We need to work together to make sure that institutions have the right resources to build these programs sustainably, and that there's a future for institutions that educate students and prepare them for the working world. So with that, I'll say thank you. I look forward to hearing from you, and I wish you all the best of luck and the best of health.
Yes, we have just listened to Jordan's presentation. He gave a valuable information about importance of experiential learning and education. And now we have Yeliz Yazıcı with us. She is going to talk about online experiential learning lesson versus traditional ones in EFL. So, are you ready, Yeliz?
Yes, hocam, I am ready.
Okay, then you have got 15 minutes to talk and 5 minutes for question and answer. Let's start then.
Okay. Thank you. Let me share my screen. Welcome you all. My name is Yeliz Yazıcı and I am from Sinop University. I try to set up an online experiential learning and the traditional learning settings, and I also want to do it in an ELT classroom because the English language is the one of the classes that our students have the level of anxiety at most. And in our flow of the presentation, I will talk about a little about introduction and literature review, and then I will talk about our methods, and then findings, results, and discussions. The traditional learning setting is, let me take this one. Okay, in an ELT lesson, I follow the given traditional learning lesson flow. Actually, the first one is a presentation of the subject according to the frame of the teaching theory, which is we use in the COVID period. We use generally the teacher dominant theory. And then the practice is applied, and then the students attend the lesson and practice the target subject with the guidance of the teacher in the online settings, actually. And after the presentation, the practice part is carried with the guidance of the teacher again in an online setting, Zoom presentations and other live sessions. And the evaluation of the learning process is carried apart from the lesson process also. The online settings of experiential learning actually carried with online traditional settings in the COVID period. And in Kolb's learning site, there's a short history about it, but I just skipped this part. And there's a learning cycle and also learning styles of the present Kolb's learning cycle. In the ELT sessions, we try to apply these styles in the presentation given here. You can see them for the for language skills, reading, speaking, listening, and writing. And for the listening part, it is generally the presentation of part. For the watching part and for the thinking part and for the speaking part, we also try to adjust the language skills with the Kolb's learning styles, and it is the main elements of our lessons in the traditional settings also. But in the traditional settings, the teacher is the dominant one. And let me talk about the teacher roles in this sense. What about our teacher roles in the traditional and Kolb learning styles? In the traditional learning style, the teacher is the guider, but also the source of the information, and also the teacher gives and rules and dominates the flow of the lesson. But in the Kolb learning style, we try to make the teacher as a facilitator, as a coach, and also as an evaluator and a subject expert. You can also see this is appropriate to the Kolb's learning cycles. In the facilitator role, educators or teachers help the learners to get in touch with their personal experiences and their reflection on it. And they also try to create a personal and trusting relationship between the learners. And the subject expert role, also the teacher helps the students to systematically analyze and organize the subject, and also deliver the knowledge by the text or the other extra materials. So the teacher actually the source of the knowledge in the subject expert role. And for the standard evaluator role, the teacher also the subject expert in here, and also the one who sets the performance objectives with the students, and also structure the performance and also activities and evaluate their learning processes with them. And for the coaching role, the teachers help them to apply their knowledge to achieve their goals, learning text, in this sense, the language skills, mostly the receptor skills actually. And they assist in the creation of the personal development plans and also provide the feedback while they are performing. The traditional and experiential learning settings are tried to be compared by this way. For example, in traditional learning settings, the main dominance is given to the teacher-focused activities, while in the experiential learning settings, the students are the main focus of the content, and the learning outcomes are just fixed, and they are defined in a scoring points and scoring systems. But in the experiential learning, the learning outcomes are flexible, and the students or the participants also can change them according to their needs. And the aim of the traditional learning is explaining the knowledge and the skills through transforming the information, while in experiential learning, the aim is the experience, getting experience. And the structure of the lesson is fixed in the traditional learning settings, while the experiential learning gives us a flexible structure. The students also can define their subjects, also can define the types of exercises they want to attend, and also they can make some suggestions according to the adjustment of the lesson flow. So in this study, the following questions are tried to be answered. The first one is defining the dominant learning styles of the control group and experimental group. And the second one is defining the difference between the pretest of the participants. Because if there was a difference between the pretest course, then our experimental design research will be meaningless. And then the third one, is there a meaningful experience, is there a meaningful difference between the post scores of the control and experiential student groups? So the descriptive and experimental models are employed together, we can say. And the descriptive aspect of research is determining the learning styles and also their level of achieving the subject-related goals. The pre-test and post-test control group experimental model was applied in this study to see and to define whether there will be a change as a result of the content application prepared according to the experimental learning design. And the groups were formed with unbiased assignment, and before the study, both of the groups were informed by the researcher, and they are also asked to answer the Kolb's learning styles. And the results show that there is no significant difference between the pre-test scores of the groups. And then the scale was used in the scale, second version of the scale was used, and it's also translated into Turkish. And when the reliability and the other statistical analysis results, we can see that the efficiency of the scale is between 0.73 and 0.83. So what are our findings? This is the findings for the first research question. We aim to define the dominant skills of the participants, the dominant learning styles of the participants. In the experimental group, the assimilating style is the dominant one, and it follows with diverging style, while in the control group, it is vice versa. The diverging is the dominant learning style, while the assimilating is the second one. You can see there is the very few difference between the numbers of the experimental and control groups. And for the second research question, the pre-test and post-test scores show that there is a increasement in number. For example, in the experimental group, we have this number, 37.26, but after the experimental learning design applied, the score also gets higher. In the control group, there is also an increasement in the number, but it is also fewer than the experimental group. So the search for meaningfulness actually is important for us. And then we try to apply another test between groups and after the pre-test and post-test scores. And we see that there's a meaningful difference between the scores of the participants. And then we try to define in which learning styles they give the differences. And it can be seen that the assimilating and diverging also are the scores that gives us a meaningful one. And the means, let me share this screen again. The meaningfulness level is 1.01 and 0.003. It means there's a high relation between these applications. And we can say that as a result and discussion, the mean scores of the both groups increased, but the mean scores of the experiment group is higher than the control group. And it can be said that the application is beneficial, but it is not clear. As a result, it's our comment actually, because the difference between post scores are very small in number, and the online learning settings can be arranged in a more meaningful setting with the help of Koiv's learning cycle. If the research results also show that the Koiv learning cycle makes online learning more meaningful for the participants. But the participants also mentioned that the applications are meaningful, but it is not a continuous process. That's why there is not there's not a subject that we can say they are fully efficient for them to continue to learn with the learning cycle applications. And the learning strategies adjusted to skill-based activities will be more effective than the strategy is applied systematically in a broader sense. We mean, by broader sense, we mean that, for example, we applied it for only 1 month. Maybe it can be carried about for a whole term or for other lessons also. And maybe the numbers are very close to each other in the mean scores, because the online learning settings are also very new for the students because of the COVID process. And thank you for listening me. And that's all that I can talk about our study. That's all. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Yeliz, for sharing your research about online experiential learning. And we can now have questions, if there is any, from our participants. If there is anyone, you could write it through question and answer. I think we don't have any.
Also, I am open to criticism about our study, because it is a new study for us. Our students also don't know, and our teachers also don't know about the Koiv learning cycles, and also applying them into an online setting. If you have any experience on applying a Koiv learning cycle to an online setting for a specific subject, I'm also open to suggestions and also criticisms, if you don't have any questions.
Thank you. Yes, from Maria Jose, she writes, congratulations, and asks, which do you consider is the greatest challenge from a teacher perspective of implementing experiential education on an online setting?
Thank you for your question. The most difficult part is the productive skills in an ELT setting. Of course, I'm talking about an ELT setting. For example, the writing part and the speaking part, especially the speaking part, is the very challenging one, because we try to give their receptive skills. For example, in the learning cycle, the receptive skills are given with the dominance of the teacher. They can also make their reflective observations via their comments. But when we are expect our students to give our active experiment and abstract conceptualization part, they also have some, how can I say, some personal issues. For example, they are ashamed of talking in English, and also they are not knowing how to use an online setting. They don't know about codes learning cycle. They don't know where they are. The first one is introduction part. For us, it's very easy and funny part, because we are defining and we are helping them to discover themselves, and this process is carried in their own language. But when the production part came into this scene, the students are generally not volunteer about sharing and not volunteer about attending. And because the process is so new for them, the most challenging part is this in an online setting for any other session, actually. Maybe it will be easier for carrying in their native language, but we didn't try it.
Okay, thank you, Yeliz. Thank you. And now we have got another presentation from Kerli and Heidi. Hi, Kerli.
Hello.
Hi. We can start if you're ready. Do you know how to share your screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
So we are ready now. Hello from Estonia, and me and my colleague Heidi, we are very grateful for this opportunity to share our thoughts and also take part of this amazing Congress. So thank you for an invitation and this possibility. And we give during our presentation, we give a short overview about our thoughts, and our focus will be an interdisciplinary collaboration model supporting NEET youth self-directed learning. And maybe our focus is more to this target group, the NEET youth, and NEET is the short acronym of about youth who are not in education, not in employment, or not in training. So we try to open the discussion or our thoughts about how bring these young people back to education and also experiential learning process. So, and we are in Estonia, we work together with one program which is which work with the NEET youth who are dropped out from school or in a high risk of drop out. Okay, sorry. Also I continue my studies in University of Tartu in doctoral studies, and my focus is lifelong learning and self-directed learning. And here is my colleague Heidi.
Hello. As Kerli said, that we are working in the same organization, and I'm also continuing my education, and I'm doctoral studies in Tartu University as well, and my subject and the topic is sociology, the discipline, and the topic is community co-creation, policy making.
Mm-hmm. And let's go to the topic. So I would like to start with general competencies. So we as adults, we need to have understanding of ourselves. We should understand our needs, our motivation, our interests, goals. We should be able to overcome different changes in our life and understand different experiences that we have in our life, and at the same time we accept the same from young people who one day will be adults as well. And also different researches has found that the people who have certain personal, social and learning skills, they will be better prepared to face different challenges of the society. And we all know that word is changing very quickly, very fast, and we meet different uncertain situation like this COVID now, and we need the skills to overcome these situations, and at the same time these young people, they should have the skills to overcome these different obstacles, changes, and at the same, and this staying in the learning process is very important. And that's why our presentation is focused to self-directed learning. And the finding from researchers have said that higher level of self-directed learning are associated with higher levels of academic performance, future aspiration, creativity, curiosity, and life satisfaction. So then it's very important that learning at a young age, it must increase the interest to learn, to try, to experience different situations, and keep this interest to discover different things through the full life. And when I made my research, then I interviewed a lot of NEET youth, and the result was that they have low or very low self-directed learning skills. So it's something that we should develop. And if we talk about self-directed learning as one of the goals of the modern concept of education, then there is the question, but how it is supported in NEET youth who are dropped out from education, how we support their skills to be high level self-directed persons. And as social skills, emotional skills, self-control, initiative, self-management, these are non-cognitive skills, and we know that half of them, the skills are acquired at home, at schools and in institutions, and they are not genetic. Then there is possibility to develop these skills. And here is where I want to mention how wonderful is the non-formal education and these different experiences for these young people, for this target group. And youth institutions, non-formal education institutions are organization where young people can get very valuable experiences to build their learning path and understand who they are, what are their interests, and then this way to come back again learning, come back to education and continue their very good life. And and it's important to look around and which kind of services we have in our local communities which support this skills development. And when I did my research, I found, I interviewed different institutions, and I found that they are oriented to learning, but they have not think out how to give these experiences or how to develop self-directed learning skills. And this ideal model for support these young people is to make these local institutions to work together to achieve the goal that young people are more self-directed in their life. And based on my research, my master thesis I did in Tartu University, I built this kind of model where in the first part is if this young people is dropped out from school or in a high risk to drop out, and the institution who is the first whom who notice her or him, then and understand that the problem is maybe in his situation is that he or she need the support, then there should be partnership in community level, that then they take contact with youth organization, non-formal education centers, where a lot of tools which they can use to find again the interest, to discover, to experience, to learn, and that's why this partnership is very important, and these non-formal education institutions can formulate the learning goals together with the young people. Identification of resources and implementing of strategies is the process they can do together, and they can use different other institution resources to be volunteer, to go to the training course and so on. And if together with youth they understand that there is some social problems that are obstacles to go on the learning path, and then of course the social department can work with these social problems, but still this organization go on with this learning path, and later they can do the evaluation together about the results of this process. But of course this model is how to put this model to work in local level. Here is very important part, the co-creation partnership, and that's why I give now the floor to my colleague Heidi, who like this co-creation so much.
Hello, thank you, Kerli. So if Kerli told you about the service, I would like to stress out the environment around the service, because it's really important when we really want effective results. We have to also think that when we create the service, how to create environment where we provide it, and not only, it's also important to think that what are the other services and what is the kind of interaction between the services, because if you don't think about it, we can't be so effective. And I think it's usually in every country that mainly in a state level, we put kind of visions and the goals, and we also create different measures to reach those goals and the visions. And usually we do it different way. I mean, because our topic or the target group is the need youngsters who needs holistic way to support them. So we know because of that we need cross-sectoral cooperation. And it's also usual that if you create those kind of visions and the measures in the state level, we provide that kind of services in community level. And I really wanted to know when I made my master thesis that where is this, where different obstacles will, where we find those obstacles, or what are the factors, what we already have to think during the policy level, and not only in one service, but when we know that there will be interaction between other services. So what kind of factors we need to think already then, because it's really important in many aspects. And I just introduced some of those factors. The first thing, of course, or the first factor is that if you start to create different kind of services in different sectors, and if you do it separately, then maybe we have the same goal, but we have to talk about it. We have to use co-creation to understand what are the goals, what are the visions, and what we want to do with those youngsters, because in every sector we see youngsters a bit different way. So do we want to help them? Do we want to support them? Even if those words seems very similar, we know that when we create that kind of services, we use different actions to do that. So I think it's really important already in the policy level, or before we start this service, to think about it. So what we really want, and if you know what we really want, or what we really want to reach with different measures, we also get to know who we need around the table, because then this co-creation starts. The second thing is if you already know who will be around the table, so then with whom we work, who are the priorities in this topic, or do we use the same terms? In my master thesis, I discovered that if you create that kind of services to the needs, we use different terms and we have different understandings. And because of that, there will be different obstacles when we start cooperation in the community level, because we discovered that we don't work with the same target group anymore. So how to make cooperation if there is no the same level where we have to work, or it's really hard. So because of that we know who are around the table, and we also know with whom we have to work, we can set kind of guidelines for the parties, so we understand what are the rules when we start to provide the services together with the youngsters. So the third is, the third factor was evidence-based factor. So I discovered in my thesis that we really describe our work and our results a different way. So, and it's really important factor if you think about the policy level. If you don't, collect the data the same way, then we can't analyze those or compare those services. And because of that, there can be other choices. So the policy level, we don't understand what really works and what not, because the data, the information is not, it is not possible to compare them. So it's really important already when we create that kind of services that all the measures in different sectors understand how we describe our work, how we describe our results, and what is the results. So this is the third one. And the last one, what I'd like to stress out is if you really know who around the table and what are our roles on that, or what kind of rules we follow when we support those youngsters, and we also know how we describe and what kind of results we want, then we know what kind of competencies we need in different sectors, because then we can understand that in the youth field, they have that kind of roles and they need that kind of competencies in social field or education field. And because of that, I think it's easier to support the youngsters at the same time, because we have common understanding about different factors. So this is the Moodle, what we would like to introduce to you with the Kerli. This is complex Moodle. And I think that's what we suggest.
Yes, so if our aim is to develop this experiential learning and all non-formal education process in local level around young personal area, then it's important to look around and how to create different partnership and make it work, and at the same time develop different competencies which are important for young people, the future life. So thank you. Any questions?
Yes, thank you, Kerli and Heidi, about your valuable talk about an interdisciplinary collaboration model. Yes, we can have questions from participants. Right.
Mrs. Taşkın, I have to remind something. Dear panelists, can you turn on your camera and microphone, please? Thank you.
Yes.
Turn on, please. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, fine.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you. For our participants, if you have any questions about Kerli and Heidi, you can ask through question and answer. Right. Wow, I don't think you have a question now.
But anyway, any time, everyone is very welcome to write us or take contact in any way, and then we can continue our discussions. Thank you for
Right.
listening.
Okay. We can for our participants, you can always email them about their work, and I would like to thank you for all our presenters and participants to join this session. And for our presenters, I would like to say that your talk was very valuable for us, and I hope to meet you in future again. Thank you.
Çiğdem hocam, there is a question here, but I didn't understand. Is it for whom? Maria Jose Trevino, question and answer.
Yes, I have actually asked. Yeliz, I have actually asked you, and you answered it online.
Oh, okay.
You answered it live. Yes.
Okay.
So you don't have to do anything.
Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Right. You have already answered it.
Okay.
That was the question I told you. Okay.
But
okay.
She writes that regarding the NEET program. It is not for me, I think. She wrote that regarding the NEET program.
I don't see it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we saw it.
Yeah.
Did you? Oh, I don't see it. I'm sorry.
Maria question, and for NEET youth, it's anything. Every story is very special. Why they are in this dropout situation, and we during our experience in Estonia, we see how great impact has each experience that they do through the youth work or non-formal education process, where they learn something. It's much more than maybe just a service to and give just information to go to work or find the job. So the list is very, very long. And so we have very good analysis also, so we can share it later also, some what we have done and what we have offered in the youth field, especially for NEET youth, to give different experiential learning process.
And if I can comment more, this where we are working with the Kerli, this measure is under the youth guarantee, and in many countries, maybe you know this program, and I think Estonia is one of 6 or 5 countries where we really in good way used the youth work possibilities, because most of our actions or activities, what we are doing in the youth field, it's something what you can call experimental learning, because we are learning to the doing. And this is the thing, I think, with what also now, when we started a new discussion about the youth guarantee in European level, they see that how valuable is this youth work. So we really stress out it that in other countries, that if there is not youth work yet in this way, then for sure, please look and see the potential for this topic as well.
And we can add maybe here right to the chat to the our webpage, which is mostly in Estonian language, but we have also translation, some case studies about NEET youth.
Yeah, I would like to know more about your presentation. Is it possible to read it on paper or other stuff? Or if you can mail to us, it will be great, actually.
Good to hear. And of course, we are ready
Sorry,
to.
there is another question, I think, from Maria Jose. I also work with at-risk youth in Mexico, and this model you presented is very inspiring. I also consider experiential learning, based learning has great impact, and thank you for sharing, she says. Thank you, Maria, as well. And yes, any other questions?
Yeah, this topic is overwhelmed, so for sure we can share this this model and the ideas.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for all your valuable research, and hope to meet you in future too.
Thank you.
Thank you.